WTIM. Good morning. You're listening to WTIM, your information station, and our morning show. It's brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Grayson Bauman. Joining us in this segment is Jack Myers. Jack is the Public Affairs Specialist with the Social Security Administration. Jack, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Good morning, Grayson. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I am doing well, and I'm glad to hear that you are doing well likewise on that end. And as always, we've got ourselves a loaded docket to try and get to here today. So I'm going to see if we can't manage to get to everything that has been presented to me here. And as we often get to talk about with Social Security is don't think you're too young or don't think you're in this situation or that situation, and it's not something to look into. This is, again, something that I think not everybody has an understanding of, that you can work and can still receive Social Security retirement benefits. And that's where I'm going to leave the floor to you to tell us a little bit about how that relationship can kind of go.
Yeah, that is an important thing for people to understand. And we do get a lot of questions about that, Grayson. There are a lot of people who call our offices and want to know how that works and what your options are. And I think before I dive into it, I'll just make a quick note that on our website at ssa.gov, if you look in our publications section, we have a publication that's called How Work Affects Your Benefits, and it'll explain all of this. So if you want to read some more about what I'm going to talk about here, that's the greatest way to do that. And then another thing I'll put maybe as a little bit of a disclaimer is I'm about to talk about the earnings limits that pertain if you're getting a Social Security benefit that's not based on disability. So if you get something from us that's based on being disabled, that's a totally different set of rules and, a topic for another day. But just understand that in that situation, you would need to communicate with us that you're thinking about going back to work, or I guess that you are going back to work. You don't tell us when you're thinking about it, but when you do decide to go back to work, let us know. But for today's discussion, we're going to hone in on types of Social Security benefits that are not disability related. So that's going to be like retirement benefits, spousal benefits, widow's benefits, widower's benefits, things like that. So if you're getting something like that and you want to work, you can. Now, whether or not a limit is going to pertain to you is going to depend on how old you are. So if you have already achieved what we call your full retirement age or reached your full retirement age, there's no limit at all. You don't have to worry about it. If you are under your full retirement age, there are going to be annual limits. So full retirement age is anywhere from 66 to 67, depending on when you were born. If you're born 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. So once you get there, you can work and earn as much as you want. If you're under that, then you are subject to a limit. How or which limit, I should say, pertains kind of depends on where you're at in relation to that full retirement age. So if for the duration of the calendar year, you are going to be under your full retirement age, then you are subject in 2025 to an annual limit of $23,400. If you are going to get to your full retirement age this year in 2025, then you are subject to a limit for the months leading up to full retirement age. So an example, let's say you're going to get there in July. Let's say you're hitting your full retirement age in July. In that case, starting 7/1, there would be no limit. You could earn as much as you want. But January through June, you would have been subject to a limit. But because you're reaching full retirement age in the calendar year, that limit that pertains for the months leading up to it is quite a bit higher. So in 2025, that's $62,160. So, it is a pretty generous limit depending on when you hit that full retirement age mark. Do keep in mind, though, Grayson, these limits only pertain if you wish to collect Social Security benefits and work. So if you're not yet getting your Social Security benefits, then we don't care how much you earn. There's no limit. We don't have any kind of say or input on that. These are just limits that would be in place if you choose to work and collect a non-disability based Social Security benefit.
I appreciate you throwing that last piece out there as well. And just so I'm making sure that I'm tracking here, not disability. We're talking spousal, widowers, and retirement benefits. 66 to 67 being your full retirement age. You can work and enjoy, no limit on that. If you're under retirement age, you can still work. However, you're subject to a limit for the months up to your retirement age. If you are not drawing Social Security benefits, however, there is no limit and no worry in terms of the amount of work you're doing. Am I on the right track here?
You are on the right track. You've got it just right there.
Okay. Anything else, Jack, to maybe make sure that we get this to stick in folks' minds when it comes to working and receiving Social Security benefits? Or are we ready to move on to our next chunk?
Well, a couple points I will make and kind of clarify things. So one of the questions we often get is what counts towards those limits. So I mentioned if you're under full retirement age this year and you want to collect retirement benefits, you would be subject to an earnings limit of $23,400. So people want to know, well, what counts towards that $23,400 limit? And it's only going to be earned income. So it's going to be your gross wages if you work for somebody else, or your net earnings from self-employment. But it doesn't include things like your Social Security benefits, a pension if you get a pension. It doesn't include any kind of interest income. So, Grayson, there are a lot of different types of income that are taxable, but not all of those types of income count towards these limits that we're talking about today. These limits only pertain to earned income. So that's one thing that you've got to be aware of. And then another thing, and I won't get too much into the weeds on this, I'll just mention that it exists and then refer you back to that pamphlet I talked about at the beginning. But there is something that's called a monthly test out there. So for somebody who wants to retire, let's say mid-year or something like that, you may be listening to this and thinking, well, shoot, I'm not going to be able to do that now because I'm going to be way over the 23.4 before I retire. Well, not so fast, because there is an exception we can apply the first year you begin to collect your benefits, where we could potentially disregard earnings prior to when you started collecting benefits if you have retired and are no longer working for the rest of the year. We could make an exception and look at your monthly earnings for the rest of the year and may be able to go ahead and pay you benefits anyway. So don't get too discouraged there. It may still be an option for you. That would be a 1 year only thing, and it would be monthly. It'd be kind of based on the fact that you're no longer working as of a certain point in the year. But if you want more info, again, go to ssa.gov in our publications section. Look for the pamphlet called How Work Affects Your Benefits, and it lays all this out beautifully for you.
And I think for some, they would probably benefit from taking another look at that and making sure that they're able to absorb all of this information presented right now. Next up, that we want to make sure that we're talking about here is if you've already got a My Social Security account that's prior to a certain date, it might be time for you to make a change or two to the way that account functions. How is that, and is that a new development that's going on?
Yeah, so this is I'll say it's a little new, a little old. Okay,
Okay.
And I'll clarify what I mean by that. So for years we've been talking about the My Social Security account. It's a fantastic tool. You go to ssa.gov, which is our website, but then you can create your My Social Security account within the ssa.gov website, and that's basically your personal portal to your information. So it'll give you information about your earnings history, estimates of your future benefits if you're not yet collecting. If you are collecting, you can do things like get verification of how much you get each month from us. You can make changes to direct deposit information if you get Social Security. You can get replacement documents like 1099. You can get a replacement Social Security card if you don't need to make any changes and you have a driver's license or state ID from most states, including Illinois. So there are a lot of really handy things you can do with that My Social Security account. Now, basically, like I said, they've been around for years, but back on September 18th, 2021, we changed the way that you create the account. So prior to that date, you would just create a username and a password all within our site, and you'd use that to access your account. when you log in, you'd use your username and your password. You'd get a code texted to you. You'd put that code in, and then you'd get into your account. But on September 18th of 2021, we changed the way that you created an account. So instead of creating that username and password, we would actually have you use a third party called login.gov or id.me. So you use that account, you create that id.me or login.gov, you authenticate yourself there, and then you connect that to the My Social Security all through our website. But there are some advantages to that, Grayson. You can use login.gov and id.me for other government agencies too. So you could potentially, in theory, have one login.gov account that allows you to access My Social Security along with other federal government websites. So, there's a lot of benefits there. But what's changed recently, so that was the old part of the change. We made that starting September 18, 2021, but we used to allow you to continue using your old username and password if you had created the account prior to September 18th of 2021.
Okay.
However, as of June 7th of 2025, the option to sign in with that old username and password is no longer there. So you either already transferred over or transitioned over to login.gov or id.me, or you will have to do that. Now, we have been prompting you to make that transition upon login for quite some time now. But if you didn't ever make that transition, now you're going to have to start essentially over and create that new login.gov based account or id.me. It doesn't affect your Social Security benefits or record in any way, so there's no cause for concern here. It's just simply a change in the way you access your personal portal on the SSA.gov website.
Glad we were able to get this information out then with the expiration date, we'll call it, of June 7th of 2025. And it sounds as if these login.gov or id.me accounts are kind of an umbrella account that you just connect your other varying accounts to. And so I think once folks get a hold of that, I think they'll be able to really figure it out and process that as well. Jack, let's go ahead and take our first break here, because there's something next up that I want to make sure we have some time to talk about here. I'm joined by Jack Myers, Public Affairs Specialist with the Social Security Administration. Here on the morning show, you're listening to WTIM, your information station.
WTIM.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. We're lower across the board with corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. July corn down 7.409 and a quarter. September corn down 7.405 and a quarter. December corn 422 down 7. July beans down 8.5, 10.38 and a quarter. August beans down 8, 10.42 and a quarter. November beans 10.29 and 3/4 down 7 and a quarter. July wheat down 7, 5.28 and 3/4. September wheat 5.44 down 8. July bean meal 276.10, that's down 4.40. July bean oil 52.83, up 66 cents. Livestock trade, August feeders 303.62, up $1.37. June live cattle 222.80, up $1.20. July lean hogs 112.10, down 12 cents. Energy market, August crude oil up 76 cents, 65.13. Jim Taylor, RF.
St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Over the years, it has meant the Gas House Gang, Stan the Man, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, The Wizard, Big Mac, Yachty, Waino, and Pujols. All those names, and they provided so many memories. St. Louis Cardinals baseball, most importantly, has meant championship baseball. We'll be describing every play right here on the Cardinals Radio Network, powered by Graybar.
Cardinal Baseball, heard on WTIM, your information station. The Big 870 across central Illinois, 96.1 FM in Christian County, 107.5 FM in Shelby County, and 107.9 in the Pena-Nokomis area. It's brought to you by Taylorville Community Eye Care, Sloan Implement, Rural Rentals, Specialized Hearing Solutions, and CNB Bank.
Cardinals Baseball on 96.1 in Christian County, WTIM.
This summer, turn your backyard into paradise with Southern Ledge Pools and Patios in Taylorville. Stop by today and get 10% off all in-stock hot tubs. But hurry, it's a limited time offer. Enjoy free water sampling and ask about our weekly and bi-weekly maintenance plans to keep your pool crystal clear. We've got the chemicals, spices, grill accessories, grills, and everything else you need for outdoor living, from pool supplies to drinks on the patio. Southern Ledge has it all. Come on in and let us make your backyard dreams come true. Buy a brand new manufactured home in Bailey Park in Taylorville for less than $60 a square foot. 2 available now to buy and move into. See pictures and find out more by clicking the Bailey Park icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Brenda Elder here, the Executive Director of the Shelby County Economic Development Corporation. From growing your business to attracting new investment, we're here to help. Find out more by clicking our icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
WTIM.
And we're back with the WTIM Morning Show here on your information station, brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first in Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Grayson Bauman. Joining us in this segment, Jack Myers, Public Affairs Specialist with the Social Security Administration. We just talked a moment ago about a change that's being made in terms of your Social Security account and how you need to make a move over to either login.gov or ID.me as well to continue on and really being able to dive into your benefits and also the relationship between working and Social Security benefits. Now we want to turn our attention to the top baby names of 2024. And Jack, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, well, Grayson, this is one of those subjects that's kind of fun to talk about every year. We see, typically around the Mother's Day holiday, we see the list of the top baby names for last year come out, and it's just like I said, it's just a fun topic. A lot of people look for it on our website. It's actually, kind of one of the busiest times traffic-wise on the SSA.gov site when that information comes out. It's very easy for us to track this information because through the process of issuing Social Security numbers, we've sort of by default become America's source for the most popular baby names. We began compiling these lists back in 1997, but the data goes all the way back to 1880. So it is really a robust list. It's got a lot of good things. You can find things like the top 10 list for 2024. So we've got the top 10 national lists for males and females. We also have popularity in individual states. So you can compare how the national list compares to a particular state. But then there are other fun things you can do. Like you can put in a particular name and look back at the historical popularity of that name. So, I happened to pull my name and your name in preparation for the show here this morning and found that in 2024, my name, Jack, was the number 15 name on the list, and your name, Grayson, with an A, if I'm spelling it correctly, was 48th on the list. So it's kind of fun to look at it like that.
48th most popular name. And that's interesting. And I appreciate you bringing that little tidbit with you because I always kind of wonder, and when I first started out, or I guess kind of gained consciousness, I guess, to even know what was going on, I never heard my name said anywhere. And as of late, I've started to hear, Grayson, get back here at the store. And I have to do a double take and look around a little bit and make sure that they're not talking to me. Well, Jack, thank you so much for joining us here on the morning show. And thank you for providing that little bit there. Jack being the 15th most popular name as of this last year, and apparently 48th most popular here in Grayson. Jack, again, thank you for joining us here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Jack Myers, Public Affairs Specialist with the Social Security Administration here on the WTIM Morning Show.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville. 96.1 FM Taylorville. 107.5 FM Shelbyville. 107.9 FM Pena Nokomis.
Have now agreed on a massive hike in military spending.
Mark Rutte has said allied leaders at this summit will take the bold decision to ramp up defense spending to 5%